Hi everyone, my name is Ava and I'm an American living in the Netherlands. And I have just brewed myself a cup of coffee. Actually, just give me a second. Totally ready. I am totally ready to share with you about my recent trip to the US, where it became extremely apparent to me that I have assimilated into Dutch culture and Dutch society way more than I thought. But before we go into detail about that, I wanted to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Atlas VPN. Now, some of you here might even be wondering, what is a VPN? Well, let me tell you. A VPN helps you stay private online. It provides an encrypted server and hides your IP address from corporations and even hackers. And Atlas VPN has these safe swap servers that actually allows you to access the internet from several IP addresses that helps ensure that you remain anonymous. So essentially, a VPN helps you stay protected and anonymous online. And while all of that is fan-freaking-tastic, I personally use Atlas VPN for a different reason, and that is to access shows and movies in other countries, especially on Netflix. Now, if you live in the Netherlands like me and you've ever tried to get on American Netflix, you know that you just can't. But with Atlas VPN, you magically can. What's also nice is that Atlas VPN is really easy to use. All you have to do is select your location and then you're ready to stream. So if this sounds interesting to you, you can check out my link in the description box down below and get more information on Atlas VPN. Also, I haven't even shared the best part yet. I know, you're thinking all of this is great, how can it get even better? Well, if you know me, you know that I love a good deal, and Atlas VPN has a huge discount right now that allows you to get it for 3 years for only $199 USD or 175 euros per month. So again, if you want to check them out, you can use my link in the description box down below and just get more information. Okay, with that out of the way, let us chat. So I was in the US recently. I got back only a week ago, and I noticed that when I was there were certain things that surprised me, or certain little everyday things that was suddenly new information to me, which makes no sense because I've only lived in the Netherlands for a little over 3 years. But I should also probably explain why I'm sitting in my kitchen right now. Welcome to my kitchen. I filmed in here before, but not a sort of sit-down chatty video, and I'm filming in here because look at the weather. It is raining, pouring outside, extremely dark, and this is the brightest room in my apartment right now. Okay, so the first thing that Ava experienced in the US, note to self, never refer to myself in the third person again. So the first thing that I did in the US that I noticed was weird, but I found it to be normal, was that every time I entered a store or a cafe and then I left, I felt the need to thank and say goodbye to the person working there. So in a store, that's pretty normal because typically you buy something and you leave, and so you'd want to say like, have a nice day, that's fine. But I found that in cafes, like when you would go up to the bar, and once we had our drink and we were getting ready to leave, we noticed that both of us kept scanning the room to make eye contact with the barista to say thank you and then leave and walk out the door, or say goodbye. And saying thank you is one thing if you've just had a conversation with the person, but if you are sitting in a cafe and you finish your drink after an hour or so and you're leaving, typically, I personally in the US as an American would not say goodbye to the barista, who might be all the way at the end of the room, the other end of the room, and then you're trying to say bye and make eye contact, and you also have to yell over everybody to that end of the room. So I do not remember doing this when I lived in the US. But the interesting thing is that now I started doing it and I found it odd not to. And I remember distinctly that when I moved to the Netherlands, I found it weird, and I made a video about this where I mentioned this, that I found it weird to say goodbye to people in the Netherlands. And now look how things have changed. I've gotten so used to it that I was this awkward person literally yelling like bye across the room to the barista with also a voice that is an octave higher than it normally is. So normally I speak like this, and somehow when you say bye, like every other Dutch person, I started doing the bye, the high pitched like doei. See, it sounds normal in Dutch. So yeah, when I was there, I did this, and it was noticeably awkward because people gave me awkward stares in the store, and the barista would look confused because we got coffee multiple times a day, and the barista would be very confused and be like, okay, bye, I guess. And I just felt in those moments like, I swear I'm from here. Like, I am American. I should know better. I have a couple of things on this list, and towards the end, I'll talk about some of the bigger stuff. But staying on the smaller everyday things side, I wanted to bring up a couple of points about food. And one of them has to do with the portions of food. Oh my God. So, I know that America has big portions, and I even like it because I feel like I'm getting a big bang for my buck. It's so cozy to me to just have a lot of food, and it's all very nice, but I was surprised by it. And each time my girlfriend and I would make eye contact, like, food, this is a lot of food. And both of us then would work really hard to finish it, which is just not smart because there was another thing that the two of us forgot, which is that you get big portions in the US, but you don't have to finish everything. You can just take the rest in a doggy bag, like in a to-go box. There we go, that sounds much nicer. And I often feel like in the Netherlands, I would like to have a to-go box, but for some reason, when I was back in the US, there I was with my big portions of food, forgetting that there was a to-go box and being like, oh, I guess I have to eat this. And I did. So I don't know what aspect of this is more disturbing to me. And related to this is, once we would get our big portions and finish our big portions, which is no easy feat, let me tell you, I think we deserve some kind of award. But when we're done with the whole eating experience, you have to pay. And that's fine. But I cannot believe I forgot. No, not the tip. I remember that you would have to tip. That is still very much ingrained in me. But I forgot about the tax. So when you see an amount, let's say $20 for a meal, you not only have to add tip, you have to add tax. And that is what I kept forgetting each time. So each time I was a bit annoyed, and the tax was added to everything, right? You get a cup of coffee, it says $6. I was in New York, $6 for a cup of coffee. I'm not exaggerating. And then that 6 would inevitably turn into 7 because add the tax and then you want to round it off. Well, it was more than 7 because we left a tip. Oh my God, coffee was so expensive, and we did that multiple times a day. Anyway, at least it wasn't oat cappuccino or latte, So, but still. So I kept forgetting about the tax, and each time I couldn't help but complain about it because, to anyone who would listen, and even those who wouldn't listen, I kept being like, I don't understand. Why don't they just add the tax? They know how much it's going to be. The tip is one thing, but the damn tax, come on. And then I realized that complaining was another Dutch thing because Americans would typically just suffer in silence. The other thing that stood out to me during my trip was the fact that I found that there were ads everywhere. Now, there are lots of ads in the Netherlands too, but really not like in the US. So taking New York as an example, like the New York City subway, which is a completely unique experience. I'm not exaggerating and not just saying this because I'm from New York. It is a unique experience. There are all kinds of people in the New York City subway, but there are also all kinds of ads. And the subway is really adorned with these ads. And for me growing up, it was like, oh, cool, this is free entertainment. New York is big, okay? You spend a lot of time riding these subways. But this time, it was really surprising to see like these ads everywhere. And they do try to make them funny, and it is entertaining. But it was just, to me, I realized that I'm not exposed to this as much living here in the Netherlands. And I do value that because I've started, I had an ad in this video, so I do realize the irony here. But at the same time, I feel like there has to be limitations on it. Like, yes, they're ads, and that's part of our lives in society, but it can be a bit too much. And when I'm comparing the Netherlands with the US, I did find that there were more billboards everywhere, there's ads in the subway. Basically, any free space was just covered in ads. And maybe that sounds like a lot, and it is, but I noticed it, and it definitely stood out to me. Okay, so now we're getting into the bigger stuff, and this one is a teeny bit embarrassing, but not to Dutch people. You'll see. And that has to do with the fact that apparently I am very direct now. I feel like I was already pretty direct, which is why I felt like, okay, I found my place in Netherlands. I consider myself somewhat tactful, so I wouldn't be extremely blunt. But apparently I've become extremely blunt because my friends were like, oh, Ava, that's pretty direct. And, you know, it happened a couple of times where they were just like, oh, that's direct, or, oh, Ava, telling it like it is. And I mean, honestly, it was something like, oh, that doesn't sound good. Or, I mean, in response to, I don't want to go into the exact details of the situations, but basically anytime someone said something, I feel like an American would be like, oh, okay, so I understand. How do you feel about it? Or, oh, it doesn't sound the best, or something like that. And then I would just say like, oh, that doesn't sound good. And they would be like, oh, Ava, is this the Dutch directness? Because my friends, they're wonderful. They watch my videos. And then they made comments like that. So apparently I've become direct. I also noticed that I found it much easier to just say no thank you. So if I'm at a restaurant or cafe, if someone be like, oh, would you like something? And I'd just be like, oh, no thank you. And I try to say it with a nice intonation and a smile on my face. So no thank you. But I feel like it would be more American to say, oh, I'm okay, thanks, and kind of skid around the no. But so I noticed that, and I'm actually finding it hard to switch back to the American indirectness, or just being more tactful, sugarcoating things a little bit, just to make the situation more pleasant, which is very Dutch. So before Dutch people say anything, you know, laten we het gezellig houden is very Dutch. So, but somehow Americans are all about that sugarcoating. Okay, and last but not least, I sort of saved the big thing for last. And it's big because I feel like this speaks to one of the reasons why I decided to move to the Netherlands in the first place. And I felt like being back in the US, from conversations to the way of life and just things that I saw around me, I noticed this time how the conversations, lifestyle, everything in the US sort of revolved around work and the emphasis on work and money. And it came up in little ways. So people, you know, often ask you, what do you do as the first thing? Or there's always a lot of focus on money, how expensive things are, which of course we talk about here too, especially in given current times. But it's a little bit different, where there is just more of this emphasis on work and money. I found that a lot of people, a lot of the lifestyle just was dominated by the working culture. And to give an example, here in the Netherlands at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, I could go into a cafe and the cafe would be buzzing. Like, sure, it's less crowded than it would be off-peak, so after work hours and in the weekend, but it would still have people in it and people would still be out and about. I mean, especially Utrecht. I feel like at any time of day in Utrecht, unless it's really early in the morning. No, wait, even then. So at Utrecht, any point of day, I feel like you will just see people out having a good time. Like, Utrecht is a really social city. And then in the US, in New York, at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, so I actually have the same time to compare, it was completely dead. There were no people in restaurants, cafes, and I'm talking no people, not just fewer people. So that's the difference. And also I noticed with my friends or people I talk to and just everyone in general. So if you're a friend of mine and watching this video, it's not about you specifically, because I have plenty of friends who also have hobbies outside of their work and make time for that and seeing people. But then I also know people who don't have time for that because their jobs are very demanding. And I think there's also this attitude of that being okay because you get financially compensated for it. So then people are like, yeah, that's fine. And just the proportion of people who value that over a work-life balance seems to be higher than here in the Netherlands. And even in cases where people do value having a work-life balance, it's not easy for them to have that because of the demands of their job, of work, of society, because everybody is focused around work. So those were a few things that I wanted to share with you today about my experiences back in the US on my most recent trip. In coming videos, I want to focus on more specific aspects that I find interesting. So if you want to stay tuned, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and subscribe. As usual, until next time.